A year it has been for the Indian equity markets, and as a result of that, as a consequence of that, it's been a fantastic year for mutual funds as well. Before we delve a little deeper into the winners in the few categories that I've spoken about, let's talk about a few very important highlights. In all probability, based on what we've seen in the markets, we've seen the mutual fund industry that has likely crossed an assets under management of 50 lakh crore in December. You'll get a confirmation of that in just about a week or 10 days from now. So that's a very important landmark to have crossed. A very important aspect is the inflows through systematic investment plans. That, as of the end of November, stood at 1.7 lakh crore. And if the trajectory is going to continue in December as well, we will likely see that number come very close to the 2 lakh crore mark. What's more, you also saw a 15% increase in the number of MF folios. And what that means is that the number of investors have grown to over 4 crore because each individual generally holds about 4 folios. Let's now take a look at some of the key performers. I've broken this down into 4 large buckets because this more or less captures the equity landscape. In the large cap space, you had Nippon India that ruled the roost, comfortably gaining over 30%. And this has remained quite a consistent performer over the last 3 and 5 years. Bank of India, a relatively smaller mutual fund scheme, has also outperformed, but HDFC Top 100 has also gained, probably on the back of its bets that have paid off in the PSU side. Now, in terms of the mid-cap space, you once again have Nippon India that rules the roost, and you have Mahindra Manulife, which is a much smaller scheme, and as a result of which it has been much more nimble. Just about 2,500 crore of market capitalization, but it's been able to select stocks that have done very well. JM Mid-Cap Fund has also gained 46% or thereabouts. And by the way, you must have seen that the index itself, the Nifty 150, gained about 42%. What has been very characteristic is that the large cap space saw a lot of actively managed funds outperform the benchmark. That hasn't been the case for the mid cap space as well as the small cap space. Let's look at the winners in the small cap space as well, and you will see that Mahindra Manulife once again makes it to the top of the list. Once again, in all probability, because it has managed to stay nimble in its stock selection, and it is only a fund which is about a year old. So some of the mistakes that were made by some of its peers in the space, to the extent of allocation towards chemical, has not had a bearing on their performance this year, which is why they ended up with gains of 57%. Bandhan and ITIC small cap were the other big performers. Now, we also looked at flexi cap because this is where fund managers have a blank slate to do whatever they want with the asset allocation. And here too, you've got a significant outperformance by 3. And of course, there were a few other schemes that also performed, but these stood out. GM Flexi Cap has gains of 39%, and the other two had about 33% and 38% respectively. Now, the index that we look at as a benchmark here is the Nifty 500, which has gained about 17%. So if you did get into a flexi cap scheme, and one of these indeed, you have comfortably beaten the benchmark. Now, we also looked at the top performing mutual fund schemes across categories, and no surprise here, all 3 of these are thematic or sectoral funds. The top fund, and this is something that has played out in active strategies across the board, PSU has been the big winner, gaining about 59.5% in the year. You also had HDFC Infra, which, based on the stocks that my colleagues have pointed out, is another theme that played out. And power and infra from the Nippon stable has also done incredibly well. I will end this small conversation with you with a quick check on the SIP figures, because that, I said, has been a very major highlight. If you look at the average contribution through SIP, that has stood at over 15,000 crore rupees. And what is interesting is, if you look at July onwards, every month has been a new record. The question is, does that continue into 2024?